Hello, Year 11. This is just a little video to remind you to include context in your A Christmas Carol essays. So I've just been marking your essays with regards to attempting to explore some more things in your Ruby Ring, as it were, looking at things in a bit more detail, which are good. But what seems to happen is when you try and do this, you often then forget to do this and lose this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to remind you of the things that you need to include with regards to A Christmas Carol. So of course, the context, we've done all this 54,000 million billion times. So it's not going to be anything that I'm going to teach you. It's everything that is, you know, you're remembering. It's kind of like a recap. Number one, it occurred, so A Christmas Carol was written during the Industrial Revolution. I mean, if you want to, just write these words down in the margin before you even looked at the question so you can remember things. The Industrial Revolution, all right? We remind ourselves of these. Transition to new manufacturing processes between 1760 and 1840. Brought people from the countryside to the city. There was an increase, a huge increase in the population in Great Britain and a massive increase in the amount of people that lived in the city. A lot of those people were very poor and they lived in the slums. The slums were awful. All right, they were places where you would not want to be at all. They had no sanitation, there would be very little heating, they were kind of back to back. The houses, you'd have big families, you know, huge families living in one or two rooms. Disease was rife, all right, because there wasn't the sort of the medicine that we have nowadays. And obviously, Charles Dickens, who grew up poor and then became rich, he wanted to help the poor. He thought that the poor deserved help. He thought that the poor did not deserve to be treated badly. He thought the poor did not deserve to be also thought of as evil. All right, thought of as terrible. So that's something that they did. All right, if you have a look at this one again, many Victorians believe that the poor deserve their miserable lives. And even that, as the world was becoming overpopulated, if those who could not provide for themselves did not survive, it was a good thing. Right, the Industrial Revolution, the slums, social reform. Charles Dickens was a social reformer. He wanted to change. I want to see these words in your answer. Thomas Malthus. If you can include, if it's relevant, Thomas Malthus and his ideas and the fact that Scrooge is the personification of Thomas Malthus's ideas at the start of the book, and then at the end, he is the personification of one of Charles Dickens's good people. If you write about this, put one of Charles Dickens's good people in speech marks. His good people were what? The four things. Humble, charitable, faithful, and forgiving. Try and put those in, all right? Thomas Malthus believed that the poor should be killed. He believed that they were surplus population, which is exactly what Scrooge says at the start of the book to the two gentlemen who come around collecting for charity. Instead of recommending cleanliness, we should encourage contrary habits. In our towns, we should make the streets narrower, crowd more people into the houses, and court the return of the plague. He was a very pleasant man. Right, Industrial Revolution. The slums. He was a social reformer, Thomas Malthus. All right, all these things you need to remember and try and include. The Victorian readers, they thought the poor were lazy and evil and that they deserved their place. They thought they were a criminal class. They thought you were born into poverty because you were a certain type of person. Charles Dickens didn't believe this. The Poor Laws, very important, 1834. Remember, 1834. The Poor Laws were introduced. They believed that the Poor Laws were introduced because it would reduce the cost of looking after the poor. It would take beggars off the streets. It would encourage poor people to work hard. But a lot of people did not believe this. They thought that poor people would be kind of like imprisoned in the workhouses. Think about what we have said previously and what we've been looking at, and the fact that the workhouses were worse than prisons. They were sent to work hard. They would have to work, you know, from very, very long hours, 12, 14 days in, you know, terrible conditions. The mills they would pick oakum, or they would have to work in like factories where the noise was really, really super duper loud. So that's something else that you've got to be aware of, all right? All of these things are really, really important, and people are not explaining them in their essays. So you've got Okay, in any different order: the Industrial Revolution, the slums. Dickens was a social reformer. He wanted them to change. You had the Poor Laws, and you had Thomas Malthus. All right, you've got to remember to include all of these if you're answering questions on that. Now, something else that I think it's a really good idea for you to understand, especially if you get a question on Scrooge's redemption, if you get a question on anything like that, is Christianity. All right, and the idea that Christians during that time they believed very much that Christians were good people, and Christians and Charles Dickens believed that Dickens's deep Christian faith was something that he really wanted to teach. Okay, so that's something else that I'd like you to really remember is Dickens's understanding of Christianity, all right, and how he should have been teaching the teachings of our great Lord and Master. So what I'm going to do, this is only a teeny tiny little one now. In the next mini video, we're going to be looking at Dickens's Christian teachings in a little bit more detail. So what you have also is the Industrial Revolution and what happened, if it's important. So if you get a question on the poor, you get a question on the slums, you get an important question on want and ignorance, you get a question, or anything really. Everything is about the fact that Charles Dickens was trying to change society. The Christians, all right, he was trying to change the readers so that they would help them. So you've got the Industrial Revolution, you've got the slums, you've got the fact he was a social reformer, you've got Thomas Malthus saying that he thinks that all of the poor should do what? Die. All right, he thinks there's surplus population. And you've got the Poor Laws of 1834. You need to know those. You need to be able to write about all of those. Okay.